Commons. Welcome to the lobby of the official opposition just outside the House of Commons. I'm here with Canada's Shadow Minister of Revenue, Pat Kelly, Member of Parliament for Calgary. We are here today to discuss the double standard in tax collection. One standard for the rich and one standard for the rest under this government. Now, I have here an Auditor General's report on how CRA goes after what it claims is tax evasion or tax avoidance. And it shows that, as always, Trudeau's tax collectors are targeting the wrong people while being extremely aggressive in order to go after individuals and small businesses, but leaving large international tax evaders, the millionaires and billionaires, to get off scot-free. This is discovered from an Auditor General's report, Pat. I'm going to read an excerpt here and then turn it over to you. And I'm quoting here from the Auditor General. For example, if the agency asked an individual to provide a receipt to support a claimed expense and the taxpayer did not provide the receipt within 90 days, the agency would automatically disallow the expense as an ineligible income tax deduction. Now, that means if you're being audited, you're an average mom, for example, and you misplaced a receipt for your children's fitness tax credit. Well, sorry, that's a bad example. Trudeau took that tax credit away altogether. But let's say you have a receipt that would be normally, you have an expense that would normally be eligible for a tax break, but you're missing the receipt. Well, CRA will say, no, too bad, you lose the deduction. By contrast, this is how they treat the big fish. For other taxpayers, such as those with offshore transactions, we found that the time frame to provide information was sometimes extended for months or even years. For example, banks and foreign countries could take months to provide information on the taxpayers' offshore transactions to the agency or to the taxpayers. Sometimes the agency did not obtain information at all, and the file was closed without any taxes assessed. So, you're a middle-class guy, you lose a receipt, then you're out of luck. You're going to get audited, maybe penalized, maybe punished because you can't find a receipt within 90 days. But if you are a wealthy international operator who can hide your money abroad and you can't prove it, they'll extend it for months and eventually they'll just abandon the case altogether. Pat Kelly has been working to redress this injustice in the way our taxpayers are treated. How can we combat the unfairness in the system?
Well, it's just an extraordinary report. It's really quite staggering, the difference between how this government treats your average normal taxpayer and those that are involved in offshore transactions. But I am going to move a bill in the House that was passed already by the Senate that will compel the agency to report back to Parliament. Through the Parliamentary Budget Officer will require them to report on the tax gap so that we can at least measure and have a metric to judge how well the department actually goes after tax evasion and tax avoidance. And it's the large international tax evaders and that we need to focus on and quit going after parents and clawing back child benefits because a parent can't provide a document the way they want in a very quick time period. In 90 days. And we've heard from parents, from single parents that have had to endure humiliating experiences of going through and being able to provide the level of detail that they are asking for just to prove that somebody's entitled to a child benefit, and at the same time an international tax person participating in an international tax avoidance scheme, they just shrug their shoulders and close the file if after months or even years go by.
Again, it is really incredible, that last point you just made, Pat, and thank you for bringing it to my attention, that after some time goes by for these international players, the file was closed without any taxes assessed. And it reminds us of the news that came out today that the Panama Papers, which, remember, this is a big leak that came out showing billions of dollars of cash was stashed in illegal offshore accounts. And with great fanfare, the Trudeau government said it was going to investigate. Well, we learned today that after 2 years, there still hasn't been a single charge laid, even though there are thousands of persons with links to Canada who were named in those Panama Papers more than 2 years ago today. So they're going after the little fish. They're going after the everyday taxpayer with relentless audits, with constant harassment, and that's in addition to the outright tax increases that the government has imposed on those same taxpayers. But they're letting the big fat cats get off scot-free. So we have a bill now being sponsored in the House of Commons in the next session of Parliament from Conservative revenue critic Pat Kelly, which will require CRA to calculate the gap between what the agency collects in taxes and what it should collect if everyone was paying their legally required obligation. And this, I believe, will produce very interesting results. It will show how much money that CRA is leaving in these international accounts while simultaneously harassing your everyday Joe on the street for a few bucks because he misplaced a receipt for one of his filings. So, Pat, thank you very much for your good work. We'll be back here in the new year for one final session before the election. It's time that we stood up for the everyday working people who work hard, pay their taxes, and play by the rules. Thanks.